Madeline Summerville, attorney and political analyst. Thank you for joining us again, Madeline.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I reached out to you, maybe it was even this morning, I can't remember, just a short time ago, because it just occurred to me as I've been reading a lot of the headlines lately in the last, especially week or so, around what's happening with ICE and students on college campuses. And we've been reading, especially here in Minnesota, we've had some cases too where it seems like somebody's maybe picked up for something, a previous DUI or something like that, and then having a visa revoked or being detained. I guess some of the questions that I've just had, I guess as a journalist, as a person, is just the legality around some of this, and just I have a lot of questions about the why and that kind of thing. So that was a lot for you. Sorry. Go ahead and just dive in.
It's great. Because I think I actually take sort of a big picture approach to this. So maybe we can start there and then whittle our way down, if that's okay.
Yeah, perfect.
Awesome. Okay. So I think it's really important for people to think about the immigration issue that we're having right now, whether it's with students or with just people who were accused of being here illegally. I think we need to look at the why it's happening, and then why it's happening in this way, right? Like why people are being detained and deported, and why they're being detained and deported in this manner. So we can start with the student issue. So when it comes to like what's happened in Minnesota recently, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, has said that students who protested on college campuses were causing, quote, destabilization at the universities. They were destabilizing these college campuses. And so let's look at the behavior that some of these students were detained for. In one case, there was a student from Turkey who was a Fulbright scholar who was detained because she wrote an op-ed in a school newspaper about a year prior to her detention, saying that the United States government should stop funding Israel with the war on Gaza. In another instance, like you said, there was a young person who had a DUI, and there were some who were protesting as well on campus, but it kind of leads you to question, what's the real why here about why this is happening if it's obviously somebody getting a DUI a year or however long it was before isn't destabilizing the campus. So then that kind of leads you to look at, okay, what is the Trump administration's reasoning for doing this overall? And I can get into that now if that's okay.
Yeah, please. Yeah,
okay,
keep
sure.
going. Yeah, I'm positive. I'm tracking. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So I know I tend to ramble on, but
there's a lot, Madeline.
So thinking about the why overall. So if you look at the briefs that the Trump administration has filed, specifically in the deportation case involving the Venezuelan immigrants that were accused of being in the Tren de Agua gang, the why that the Trump administration is giving, right, is clear in the statute that they've invoked, right? So they invoked the statute called the Alien Enemies Act. And the Alien Enemies Act is what's used during two different times, right? It's either times of war or a time where there is an invasion by a foreign government. And what you want to do is deport people who are in the United States right now, who are from that foreign government that either has sent people to invade your country or that Congress has declared war against, right? So neither of those situations are happening with Venezuela or El Salvador. But, right, then you want to know, so why are they invoking this, right? And that speaks to the reason why the detentions and deportations are being done in this way. So the purpose of the creation of the Alien Enemies Act was so that you could deport people without due process, right? Because it was during a time, it would be for times when there's such an imminent threat to the safety of American citizens that any foreign national from that specific country being in this country is a threat to our safety, and not just a threat, an imminent threat, right? Like it's like danger lurking around the corner. And so I think that when you look at that reasoning, it makes sense. If that's the level of danger, then you say, okay, we're not going to worry about people's rights right now because there is such an imminent threat of danger that we need to just get those folks out of here or in detention or out of or back to their country. And so that reasoning, again, is if there's been an invasion by a foreign country that was sent by that government, right? Or if Congress has declared war on that country, and neither of those things have happened. You could say that there's an invasion at the southern border. You could argue that, but you wouldn't be able to argue that that was sent by that country. So then you look at the why here, and you realize that it's because they don't want to grant them due process. And I know that's a big, long explanation to get there, but one thing that I learned, because I just spoke to an immigration attorney who's been working on these issues, because I wanted to be able to understand it, because that's not my field of expertise. So I wanted to be able to learn what the actual laws were and then kind of integrate that into this political framework. What she said is that actually, if you are here on a student visa or you're here illegally in this country, everyone has due process rights and everyone has free speech rights. Period. Right? Whether people think that they should or they shouldn't, they do.
Okay.
And so if you respect the rule of law in this country, right, you understand that if you're accused of destabilizing a university in a way that threatens national security, or simply your presence here is considered a threat to national security, you have a right to stand in front of a judge and say, they're wrong about me. Because one American deported that shouldn't be is too many, right? Just like one, immigrant who came here illegally, who committed a crime, like a violent crime here, so it's still here is too many, right? But one American who's deprived of their due process rights, or even one citizen of the world who is deprived of their due process rights, because that's what we believe in this country, is too many. And so I think it's interesting that the argument is that there is such an imminent threat to national security, to safety, to student safety on campus, that it merits getting rid of the due process rights and the free speech rights that every citizen and non-citizen is supposed to be afforded in the United States.
Yeah, and I think we are seeing this play out actually with the case in Minnesota that I was just reading about, the U of M grad student who again was arrested, I believe, on March 27th, and I'm just kind of going off of memory here because he had a previous DUI on his record from, I think, 2023. And so he actually went before a judge, I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago, and then a hearing is scheduled for Friday, where he will have that due process and he will be able to sort of argue his case with an attorney there. So I do see that sort of now kind of playing out on that end of things. So it's interesting, but this student has said, I didn't know why I was being arrested. I thought I was being kidnapped. And so I think, and again, this is according to this person. So just trying to stay to kind of the facts here and what we're actually seeing with our eyes, and such an emotional issue. But I appreciate having you on to really try to just cut through the kind of the whys, because even if you don't agree with the whys are the whys, right?
Absolutely. So. And one of the other things that I learned about international students that are here on a visa, so you can have your visa revoked for whatever reason, whether it's somebody who is deemed a threat to national security or whatever it is. But if you maintain your student status, which means that you're still going to classes, that you're still enrolled, and you haven't violated any of the terms that the university system requires for you to still be a student, you can stay here in school and fight the revocation of your visa while you're still here. And so it's none of that has been allowed, right? They're in detention, they've remained in detention, and according to the rules, they have a lot of rights that these people have been detained. They have a lot of rights that they have not been granted. And I know that you and I work really hard to stay neutral and to give people the facts as they are, so that they can try to make their own decisions and conclusions about how they want to react to them. But there's really no other way to present this issue here.
Yeah, and again, to your point, in the case I was just talking about, so that the person being, I think, held on bond, so I don't know if they're still in the jail or not, but
Gotcha.
that student, and so there's a detention there that's happening, and it feels to me, it looks to me like, if you're just reading the tea leaves, it looks like that this is going to all end up in the courts, and that I don't see. I don't know. Am I reading that wrong?
You're not reading that wrong. And I think what you're speaking to is two different really important issues that are coming up right now. And the first is the separation of powers issue, right? So we forget, and there's a lot of rhetoric everywhere, really, around the judiciary having power over the executive and the legislative, right? But ultimately, whether it's during wartime or not, the executive always has a check on that branch's power, whether it comes from the judiciary or the legislative. And that's because we don't want somebody to come in and just execute their will without that being the will of the people. And because we elect our representatives and we elect our judges, right, they are able to check the president. It was certainly the intention of the founding fathers and the Constitution to make sure that was the case. So we don't want the executive branch to be overriding their authority in saying we're not going to listen to judges. And then on the flip side of that, here, like as you said, it's going to end up in the courts. I think it's really interesting because the way that the ruling in the Alien Enemies Act case came down is actually not at all the way that it's been framed by the media so far. So just to clarify that, right? Remember how I told you there were two circumstances in which it would be used, and it was clear that, and so the whole point of invoking that act is so that you can deport or detain people without due process because it's such an imminent threat. What the Supreme Court actually said was that, yes, you can invoke the Alien Enemies Act, but they still get their due process. So it doesn't make any sense. And my subtextual reading of it is basically that usually when a president is granted the power to be able to make such a declaration, just he can say it and it is so, then it's difficult for the court to step in there. But what he's saying is, okay, whether you have the power to be the one to invoke it or not, we have the power to check you and say, we as the judiciary have the power to check you and say, no, man, these people deserve their due process rights, because we don't want Americans or people who don't deserve to be deported or detained, period, to have that happen to them.
I feel thank you for all of that. My next deep dive is to kind of look at other countries too, and these kinds of things. I mean, just as far as restrictions and rules, because, and this is a crazy kind of silly example, but I remember when Taylor Swift had a concert in Canada, and there were ticket holders that were trying to get there from the US, and they had a DUI on their record, and they couldn't get in. And so, even a country like Canada or Mexico that's sort of bordering us, just to understand a little bit more about how we kind of compare to them.
Yeah, and I'm really grateful that I have the opportunity to talk about this with people, because I think that being able to put into context the arguments that are being made to understand why this is happening and why this is happening in the manner that it's happening will lead people to take whatever action that they think is appropriate, but at least they'll have the choice knowing what the truth is. And I really appreciate that. And speaking to the immigration attorney that I spoke to earlier, she said that students who might be confused, who are international students who might be watching, she said that you should call your university every 2 to 4 weeks to check your student status, because the visa thing, like your visa status and your student status are two different things. And so you should call your university to make sure that your student status hasn't changed. So I wanted to make sure that if any people were watching and they were confused, that they might be able to take that measure.
Yeah, no, that's very, very helpful. I know we have to wrap up. So something happened about an hour ago where President Trump paused the tariffs for 90 days. And we've been talking to you for the last month and a half about these tariffs. So I just really quickly just need to get kind of your reaction on that. Yes.
So I actually found that out from my Scalia friend that I talked about last week, right? who I call him my Scalia, my RBG, because I think he makes really good arguments for the Trump Republican side. And it's funny because he was like, Trump is a genius,
Right.
good work.
Right. That's, yeah, of
right.
course.
And I was like, I mean, you know, I think if he wanted to get the job done, he did. The fact is that it ended up being the threat of tariffs rather than imposing them. So what can we take from this as the American public, right? What do we glean from that? It's that sometimes his stuff is for show, right? Sometimes this isn't policy and we don't always know what's going on. So that's why I think it's important to be able to put things into context and to look back at, and for people who have the training that I do, to be able to look back at history and say, okay, for example, if J.D. Vance has said that universities are the enemy, or if Marco Rubio has said that these protests are destabilizing, what does that mean for what's happening today, so that we can try to make sense of it?
Oh, deep breath, because there's just been a lot that's been going on, right? Every time I talk to you, it's like something changes in 5 minutes. But thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on and just helping us look at this in a very sort of more logical way with your attorney brain and your political analyst brain. And I appreciate that you reach out to people on different sides of the issue just to try to get all sides of it. So thank you.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. And you've trusted me to come on here, and I appreciate the people who are watching so much, and I want to be able to tell them the best that I can. So
for sure. All right. Take care. Next time I talk to you, the world's going to look totally different, I'm sure. So
oh my God.
Get ready. All right. Madeline Summerville, thank you so much for your time. Bye.